Radio Show with your host, Lonnie Clark. We stand together and accept that we now live in a world transformed by Fukushima. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time here on UCY.TV Radio. We relentlessly engage every ear that listens. We expose and confront the complete lack of accountability for the nuclear industry. Consider social engineering programs who view our bodies, minds, and souls as assets on a balance sheet. We discuss vital current issues, interview activists, and engage our audience in an effort to allow all voices to be heard. The Age of Fission Radio Show creates a venue that all will choose. We encourage our listeners to reclaim their power and their courage to take action and save our planet from the ravages of greed and indifference. Our actions matter. Every voice matters. We remind our listeners that happiness is resistance. Love is greater than fear. Good morning, UCY.TV radio listeners. This is Lonnie Clark with the Age of Fission radio show. I want to thank you for joining us, and I want to thank our Eugene affiliate, KEPW, for carrying our show. And thank you for carrying Libby Halevi's show also, Nuclear Hot Seat. Today we have with us a guest that's been with us before, a friend of our show, and a man who's inspired me to keep on keep going. I watch his podcast every Friday. We're speaking with Dave Parrish today from Operation Save the Earth. Thanks, Dave, for joining us.
Always a pleasure, Lonnie. Thanks for having me.
So tell us about your weekly podcast on YouTube. That's where I see it. It's on YouTube, correct?
Yep, that's correct.
And so tell me what happens and how long is it at a specific time every week?
Well, I try to aim for 1:30 on Friday afternoons to have it released, but, sometimes it's a little bit before then, sometimes a little bit before or after. It really just depends on, the taping process and the writing process, the editing process. There's a little bit more to the actual production of the videos than, like, let's say, my old podcast that I just did audio for back in 2013. And, it's just been sort of an evolution over the years of the podcast, and now, the Fuku Friday Happy Hour Hangout, as I call it. What I just do is I try to, take whatever the top story is of the week from what's going on with Fukushima and the nuclear disaster there, and I just try to build around it. What's the message? What's the story? What's the important takeaway that the Fuku fighters and people like yourself are listening in can get?
Yeah, well, why don't we start with that? Why don't you tell people what was the latest? It is actually so shocking that it does keep us going, because what they're attempting to do is just bury it and make everybody believe that it's all okay. So why don't you share with our listeners what the current news is?
Well, it's really, a case of same old, Lonnie, because when I first got into the whole Fukushima nightmare back in 2011, I discovered early on that there's actually a cover-up going on. The Japanese government is trying to, rebuild and try to everybody be shiny, happy, and forget about it. And, of course, that's being backed up by the U.S. government, which, under the Clinton State Department was, very instrumental in, trying to keep everything as normal, right, instead of evacuating the Pacific West Coast, which they should have done, and warning the public about the dangers that would come. So, when I did the show this past Friday, what I did was talk about the World Trade Organization, and they basically denied a request by South Korea's government to ban Fukushima seafood. Now,
that's big news. That's saying that a country cannot stop radioactive food from coming into their country.
Exactly. Now, you know as well as I do, because you don't eat the fish, who on earth wants Fukushima sushi? Who wants that? Really? Seriously? Can you think of anybody that would?
I have a niece who posts on Instagram every Friday her sushi. I think she does it just to get to me.
Yeah, but is it from Fukushima Prefecture? Probably not.
Probably not. And I don't think so.
It could be because like I said, the U.S. standards. We don't know. That's one of the things why I don't eat fish. You don't know where it's coming from.
Exactly.
If you can't source your food, if you don't see it on the packaging right there on the label, why are you taking that risk?
Well, the one thing that people can do is download an app called Boycott and scan all your food, and it'll tell you where it comes from most of the time. That's what I use. I mean, if you're not sure exactly where it comes from, I mean, I was able to find here over the summer with Boycott these beautiful watermelons that they were selling in both Fred Meyer and Albertsons, organic watermelon that came from Hermiston, Oregon,
right,
which is right next to Hanford. The week after, there was a notification in the news that there was plutonium seen on the highways.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's not even, the farmers are not notified. This is the thing. It's not like the farmers are being malicious. People are intentionally being misinformed.
I mean, you have to remember Hanford, after the cave-in that happened earlier this year, what did they do? They ran down to Home Depot, grabbed some plastic tarp, and threw it over the top of that. Okay,
they're filling it with gravel. That's their plan. Fill it with gravel.
We're not, dealing with, rocket scientists here. This isn't whiz-bang technology that they're talking about. This is, Home Depot fixes for a catastrophic, situation and problem, right? Of course they're not going to tell farmers, they wouldn't even know what to tell the farmers, how to protect themselves and their crops. But I can tell you this, the World Trade Organization saying to South Korea, no, you can't do this, that is a big deal. And what it told me was like, well, the cover-up is still on. It's just in its effect today as it was, when it first began back in 2011. And, that's unacceptable. That was unacceptable to me then. It's just as unacceptable to me now. And I know the South Korean government, is really going to look at an appeal of that because, like I said, who wants that? I know the people don't. And I know that I'm not trying to take away the livelihood of the fishermen there in Fukushima Prefecture and on the eastern seaboard of Japan because, they've been, doing this their whole lives, for generations, and now all of a sudden you can't fish, all right, because it's too radioactive. It's a bum deal all the way around. But, hey, what can I tell you? This is what it is, and it has been since March 2011, gonna be forever, basically. Right. So, well,
that's the hard conversation they don't want to have. We are living in the age of fission. We are living in a contaminated time. And what really astounds me, Dave, is that I have interviewed people on here who've said that they know about solutions. There's ways to reverse this trend of nonstop contamination. It's going to require a retooling and a rethinking of the whole thing. But honestly, it's beyond comprehension that our elected officials would rather just dismiss the whole idea rather than tell everybody we have a worldwide planetary emergency. I mean, that is the fact. If our grid system went down anywhere, it would be really catastrophic if we would have 2 or 3 nuclear plants going up in smoke because they didn't have generators.
Sure. That's all it would take, literally. And, we've talked about this before, Lonnie. 40% of Americans are within a 50-mile radius of a nuclear reactor. And that's, that's a big deal, So what you're talking about is super important.
And it's difficult, though. I have to say, this is the hard part, is when I first got into this process, I did not think there were very many people out there paying attention to the nuclear contamination stuff. I thought really it was just the YouTube, because the professional community is very muted because they want to guard their reputations to be able to testify in court.
Yeah.
So they don't deal with, there's a sort of, this is what I've come to understand, there's a hierarchy, even in the anti-nuke movement, about who will talk to who and who won't talk to who, and how you build up efficacy and how you build up credibility. And, it's a really interesting thing. But for me, I'm stunned by that because we need all these lines to be blurred because we're talking about a worldwide catastrophe that's going on now for 7 years.
Yeah. You're 100% right about that, Lonnie. The whole, reputations and hierarchy and all that stuff that you're talking about, that's just slowed things down.
Yeah.
This whole last 7 years. And, we needed bold leadership right from the jump. We needed, the Japanese prime minister and the diet there to really step up. But the problem was who was in charge then? It was the DPJ, the Democratic Party of Japan, which was a newer sort of more progressive wing of the Japanese government, and they were just ill-prepared for what was to take place. That's why the LDP and Prime Minister Abe got back into power shortly thereafter, and has been running the show ever since. That more conservative type of approach. And because the nuclear era has stretched for so long, there's just a lot of people with a lot of money that have been making money off of the nuclear era for so long. And this is one of the main reasons why the cover-up has lasted so long, is because all these people continue to make that money. And even though, there's only just like a couple nickels left of that money, they're still scrapping for it. And that's what I was talking about on my show last Friday, is I'm seeing new reports of more propaganda being rolled out. More of this, oh, hey, nuclear's fun and cool again. No, come on. After 3 strikes, you're out. That's how the game works, all right? 3 Mile Island, Chernobyl, Fukushima, you're done. Even the people inside the industry, like I've said before, I've talked to people inside the industry, people who work inside the industry, and they know that the writing's on the wall. It's only a matter of time before the nuclear era truly is over. And like I said, these guys out here, they're just scrapping for that last nickel, and they're trying to push us down in the process. But, see, we're not going to make the same mistake that the anti-nuclear movement made back in the late 90s after Chernobyl. They were like, oh, well, we're just going to let the Clinton administration take care of this. We're pretty much going to write off, all this work, and it's going to all work out. We're going to have a nuclear-free thing. That didn't work out now, did it? Especially when the Clintons are, dealing uranium to the Russians. So, well,
they have a vested interest in the. I follow a uranium newsletter, and that they are very happy. The uranium profits from uranium sales is skyrocketing under Trump because he is very pro nuclear. And they are just pushing it. I mean, this is where, there's really no delineation between Clinton and Trump. In my mind, there never has been. Because they're just both party line people. They are not even going to consider that nuclear contamination is so harmful we don't know what to do with it. That's what John Goffman said. This is really what every single person who has scientifically looked at it said. This is so big, we really have a catastrophe. We need to stop it right now.
Right. And, you're right, about Clinton and Trump being, they're buddies. I mean, they went to each other's weddings and stuff like that. I mean, it's just like, there shouldn't be any real shock to anybody with any kind of consciousness about how things are going with Trump and nuclear and which direction that is going right now. But, hey, guess what, guys? Fuku fighters, we are here. And we ain't going nowhere. Okay? And like I said on the show last Friday, we've lost people along the way. We've lost good people along the way. Either they lost it, or they died, or they just fell out. They're like, I'm not going to do this anymore. But you know what? Yeah. Those people get replaced by other people of conscience who look at this situation, see what you and I see what all the experts see, and know that they have to do something about it.
A story came out October 21st in the Japanese news. This is super shocking. More of Joban Line reopens in Fukushima. They're reopening Fukushima. There's a picture. A train runs by a temporary storage site for contaminated soil. A train is running past a site with mountains of contaminated soil that they've dug up. Now, is that safe for the people on this train to pass by that every single day? It's like they've concentrated the radioactivity in spots.
Yes. Yeah, I don't think, any of those railways or roadways that have been reopened in Japan, especially in the radioactive areas that are surrounding the plant, should be accessible still to this day. But again, this is the Japanese government. That's right. Fukushima Prefecture. They're saying, look, we can rebuild. We can continue. That's the mindset there. I mean, after World War II, we're just going to rebuild everything. I mean, you have to remember, Tokyo was flattened at the end of World War II, and they had to rebuild the entire, infrastructure for the country, and they obviously did. And that mindset continues and persists to this day. And it's like, look, this is not like that, because the radiation in those areas, 7 years later, if you have your Geiger counter, go watch, some of the video that I have seen in the last few weeks of people riding those roads with their cars and their Geiger counters and seeing how incredibly hot those areas still are to this day and will be for years to come.
They're actually higher this month than they were a year ago. I mean, they're not getting cooler. There's people out there, they put out these videos where they don't speak. They just drive around and they show their Geiger counter.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And, but the Japanese government itself, it's very difficult inside of Japan to actually find news. The news we find is everything's fine back in Fukushima. Mm-hmm. The air radiation has just gone back to normal so time to move back home, everybody. It's perfectly fine.
But see, on the plus side, Lonnie, is that the people know better. The only people that are moving back are the very elderly, who they're like, well, I'm only going to live 10 more years anyways. The cancer's not going to get me in that time. Yeah. But are there kids? Are there grandkids moving back? Hell no. No, they've already moved far, far away, the ones that could afford it. They moved far, far away, and they're never coming back. Okay? Now, the thing that you got to keep in mind, Lonnie, is that in Japan, land is everything, all right? It gets passed down from generation to generation for literally like hundreds of years, okay? So if you owned land in some of these hot spot areas, of course, as a family thing, you would never want to leave there, right? But because of the radiation, and you don't want to have kids who can't have kids, right? Those people have had to leave. So I just hope the Japanese government understands that there are some areas that are not just difficult to return to, but you won't be able to get back into them for very, very, very long time.
Well, I've read several articles last week. I was just trying to find it, and I couldn't find it, Dave. There was an article that I read that said basically that it's perfectly fine to move back home to Fukushima. Most of the area, only a very small area within, I think it said, the equivalent of 3 miles next to the plant. Everything else is gone back to pre-Fukushima levels. That don't worry, you can move back home.
Yeah, but we have videos and reports, real scientific studies that show otherwise, right? Genetic damage to butterflies. Look, if it's hurting these insects, guess what? It's also hurting you, alpha predator. Guess what? That radiation is affecting your DNA as well. And like you said, we're seeing more accumulation in areas there, year to year. And it's like, why on earth would anyone want to move back there? Let alone, have an Olympic event there, right? So, we just have to keep on doing what we're doing and keep pushing the message, because the Japanese government, or not Japanese government, the Japanese people need us too, okay? They fight their own battles there as best they can, but we have to fight as well, side by side with them, to let them know that they're not alone, all right? That let them know that we understand that problem and that we're going to back them up.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is the one thing. What would you say to people? How do people go out and start to, because Kevin Finnegan, he's a young activist here who's moved to the West Coast. Mm-hmm. And we were talking about it over the weekend, and he said he cannot talk to people about Fukushima at all. If he starts to talk to them, they kind of put him off. That happened to me, actually. People would look at me as if I was the F girl. Oh my God, she's going to start saying the F word, right? That Fukushima's the new F word.
Right.
Everybody that knows me knows it's an issue, that it's something that's on my mind all the time. It's sort of one of those things that I don't bring it up, but if I see somebody eating fish or salmon, my eyes bug out. Yeah. Like, literally, I cannot contain myself because it's almost like you're eating cancer. Right. You know, just go ahead, put that in your body. It's a ticking time bomb. Yeah. What is your suggestion to the youth, to the younger people who are concerned about it but don't know how to express activism to other younger people?
That's a great question, Lonnie. And I had to wrestle with this for years, especially during the early years of Fukushima, because nobody believed it. Nobody could even comprehend just how terrible a situation it was, right? So, you know, when you start talking about Fukushima to people, especially back then, it's like, you know, you're speaking some kind of alien language that they just don't comprehend at all. Right. But now how I do it is, it's real simple, because when people ask me, oh, geez, Dave, what do you do? And I'm like, well, I'm, run Operation Save the Earth, and I explain to them what that is. And how I do it is, it's real simple now. I just go, well, you know about the Fukushima nuclear disaster, obviously, right? Because now, I mean, compared to back then, 2012, 2013, they didn't know anything. You say Fukushima, they say Gesundheit. Now you say Fukushima, they understand right away. Oh, Fukushima, radiation, there's a meltdown. That they at least get the basics, right? So then once you already establish with the people that you're talking to, oh, we're already talking about Fukushima, right? You have that automatically just going for you right there. Then you just carry it forward, and you start talking about everything that you do for it, everything that it means to you and your family, and everything. I mean, all the really basic stuff, and if the more you can ask questions of the people that you're talking to, that's going to prompt them to ask you more questions about what's going on at Fukushima. And then it's just a matter of knowing your research, you having that to be able to back up and just it's really at your fingertips really at this point now, because there's so many resources, so many great Fukufighter resources, people out there like yourself, Lonnie, that have been doing this for so long, and you can just say, oh, well, just go watch Libby Halevi's podcast, or go
to Operation Save the Earth. Dave, I have to say this is hilarious. Your on Instagram, your OSTE, right? On Instagram? Yeah. Do you know it was just this weekend that I realized that was the initials of Operation Save the Earth?
Yep. That's right.
Talk about post-ignorance. I swear to God, I always told this to Kevin, that I was like the perfect post-ignorance person, because a lot of times I'm just like, doot, doot, doot. I mean, I did live next door to San Onofre nuclear power plant my whole life and thought it was a military observatory.
Oh, my goodness.
I had no idea until I moved to Oregon, until it was being closed down. I was involved in this process that I'm like, wait a minute, that's where I used to live.
Yeah.
So this is what I say. People, you don't know what you don't know until you don't know it.
Amen to that. Yeah.
And that's really where we're at. Like, all of us really believed, when I 100% believed President Obama when he said, Fukushima is been taken care of. Mm-hmm. No need to worry. Yep. It's perfectly fine. And I moved on.
Sure.
See, and lots of people, and we were even, but this is the stunning part. Even anti-nuke activists, the way they frame it, it's one of my frustrations. I make comments all the time in these public forums, because they say, well, Fukushima had 3 nuclear meltdowns. It's not a had issue. This is an ongoing, ever ongoing, until they learn how to really figure it out. We are in a state of catastrophe, nonstop catastrophe, since March 11th, 2011. That's the reality.
People have to start looking at this, as a nuclear war that's in slow motion. Yeah. Okay, the bomb already went off. You've already been hit by the radiation. And here's the thing: the radiation keeps dripping into the ocean, released into the atmosphere. It is. It is something that we count every single day post Fukushima. After 3/11/11, there's all this time where, guess what? You are in danger, whether you are aware of it or not. So it's up to you as individuals, and that's the thing. When I'm talking to people, I always put it on the other person I'm talking to. It's up to them to do the work for themselves now, because I've already done the work for myself and my family. I do these little podcasts and everything for my family. That's how it started out. It's like, nieces and nephews, pay attention. Okay, you need to start knowing what's really to know. And I've been saying it, as well as I do, Lonnie, do your own research, right? As soon as you do your own research, you find out that, hey, guess what? Obama was being paid by Exelon. So of course, he's all for propagating this nuclear nightmare and the cover up with Fukushima and all that, right? After he said everything's fine with Fukushima, he didn't say that word again for his entire presidency.
Right.
He went and visited Japan. He 2 years before he left, he went and visited Japan. Got the sushi there. Didn't talk about Fukushima at all the whole time he was there.
Right.
I'm like, come on.
And you can guarantee they Geiger counted that sushi. I mean, they tested it for, before they served it up. They knew what they were giving him beforehand. I mean, this is the thing when he went there. And then not only that, he took a 3-week vacation after Fukushima. Oh, yeah. Immediately, they went south. He took his whole family. They went south. So the point is, though, that I have come to understand that if they could get somebody, a so-called organizer progressive like Barack Obama, to sell his soul, there isn't a single person they're going to allow to inhabit the White House who will tell us the truth, period. Because I believe we've had a military coup. We have had a takeover by the military. And this is why we don't know about there's a lot of things we don't know about. The only difference with Trader Trump is that he's literally given up. He basically, when he first got into office, he told Mad Dog Mattis, you make all the decisions. Just the only thing I want to have control over is the nuclear decision. Mm-hmm. That was a very well-known thing that people aren't asking about. And, with us having lost these soldiers in Niger, they keep saying, well, we don't have any information. Well, go ask Mad Dog Mattis what it's all about. Mm-hmm. Forget the president. He doesn't know jack,
His briefings include slideshow presentations. Here's drawings of kitties and stuff like that. Oh, here's what's going on in our country, President Trump. Oh, it looks good. I'll tweet about it later.
Everybody hates you, so what are you going to say about it today?
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, he is so pro-nuclear. He has not said himself one single word about the ongoing catastrophe in Japan or the ongoing, the challenges that people are having from this thing. I mean, Dave, if you don't mind, I didn't ask you this before the show, so you can just 100% say I'd rather not talk about it, but you have family in Japan, correct?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
And so what is their responses? If you would you mind sharing that with it? Like, what do they say? Because you're pushing them. You have these podcasts. Uh-huh. They have a direct connection to somebody who's pushing back from the propaganda that they're supposed to buy into. What's their responses to what you're doing?
Well, the thing is, my family's been very supportive of what I've been doing. Probably, a little more questions in the beginning, but now that I've been doing it for so long, there's really isn't any questions because, week in, week out, the work stands for itself, and they see that. And like I said, in Japan, there's sort of like, it's a different mindset altogether. The culture is really, really different than it is here in the States. And people, I think, tend to lose sight of that a little bit. But,
what do you mean? What is that?
It's a far more conservative society than here in the United States. You're expected to say and do certain things at certain times in certain situations. And, this whole nuclear situation has prompted a lot of change, actually, in Japan. I mean, you got to remember, Lonnie, before Fukushima, when did you see or hear about any type of protests going
Never.
on in Japan. Exactly. The last time they had them was student protests in the late 60s, and that was the last time. And now, after Fukushima, well, did the Metropolitan Coalition Against Nukes show up every Friday night in front of the Parliament and voice their opinions loudly?
They still do that
every Friday night after work. They show up.
Wow.
Okay, and their protests, that have sprung off from that, many times over the years since then. Wow. So there has been a lot of change in Japan. Now, when it comes to the prevailing attitudes about Fukushima, even like I said, even folks who live in Fukushima Prefecture, they want to believe that they're going to be okay, but they take precautions on the side, right? They're like, oh, everything's fine here in Fukushima, but I don't eat this or I don't eat that, and I watch where my water is coming from. Little things like that, right? The sort of basic self-care things that you need to be doing, especially in those regions where you're affected. But people in Tokyo, it's out of sight, out of mind. Because we've talked about this many times, Lonnie, and I'm sure you've talked about it on your show lots. Radiation, you can't see it, can't smell it, can't touch it, can't taste it. You don't know it's there, but it's there and it's doing stuff to you, right?
Yeah.
So if people have that consciousness in Japan now, which I think a lot of people do, especially the younger generation, it makes a difference. But, again, older mindsets, older sort of beliefs and values, they're the ones that are running the show right now. And we just saw this in the election in Japan yesterday, right? Prime Minister Abe called for a snap election, and the lower house of the parliament was dissolved. You got to remember that's a parliamentary system that they have in Japan, not like how we do here in the United States. And by dissolving the house, the lower house, Abe in the short term is just trying to bolster his position, and he called the snap election in very timely fashion because what he did was he basically undercut the progressive movement that was really starting to gain momentum at that point, because the governor of Tokyo, Mrs. Koike, formed a new party called the Party of Hope, and it had an anti-nuclear platform. It was all about a conservative financial approach that was going to be beneficial to the people, and Abe say, oh well, I'm going to nip that in the bud, and I'm going to shore up my approval ratings, because he was like really bad in the approval ratings this past summer. He had a bunch of little scandals that were persisting for him, and then North Korea came. This whole saber rattling with North Korea came, and he took this advantage, this timing advantage, to have the snap election, reaffirm his position in government, and to nip the progressive movement in Japan in a bud. So, it was successful. But this is a short-term thing for him. I'm telling you, Abe, he is in a lot more trouble now politically than he probably ever has been in his career because of these scandals, because, he's pushing this sort of very militarist agenda, he wants to roll back, parts of the Constitution there. And, the people are very, skittish. They don't trust him very well. But, the thing is with this election, I think if Mrs. Koike had actually decided to run for, the lower house and then been, chosen by lower house as the prime minister, I think, we could have seen a real sea change there in Japan. But she chose not to, and I'm not sure if she got pressured or what have you, not to. And I think that's what really killed the momentum there for the progressive movement during this election. Now, they have another election coming up next year, and what Abe is going to try to do is basically say, okay, this is it. I'm going to be the prime minister through the Olympics, and that because that's all he cares about. That's literally all he cares about. That and maintaining his family legacy, because like this pro-militarist thing that he's doing. We talk about research. Go back and look at Abe's family history sometime. Take a look at what his grandfather did to China during the World War II, the early days of World War II, and start to understand where Abe's family history and mindset come from. And it's little wonder why Japan and China have kind of an icy relationship right now. I mean, they try to do things with trade on the side, but Abe is no friend to the Chinese right now, and they let him know about it all the time. So,
That's interesting because as Americans, we don't reflect on that enough. We don't think about those long-term relationships, but especially in Asia, that does matter quite a bit. The history, that's like, it's almost like there's no difference in generations. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely, and that's one of the things that the sort of the byproducts that I've picked up along the way here, Lonnie, being a part of Operation Save the Earth and this whole Fukushima nightmare, is understanding the greater geopolitics that's involved with this because. Like I said, Japan was under different leadership at the time, and basically the American government told the Japanese government what to do and how to handle or not to handle the situation at that time. And ever since then, Abe, and the LDP has been pushing their own agenda. On one hand, Abe, because as you know, he went to visit Trump as soon as he got elected. Yeah. He visited the White House 3 times. He played golf at Mar-a-Lago.
Right.
He's the only prime minister in the history of Japan who's ever gone to the White House 3 times.
Really?
Ever. Find another one. There won't be. And he did it in a month.
Well, this is all about the nuclear industry, 100%. 100%. Making sure that Trump wasn't going to blow the whistle or say something stupid about Fukushima, no doubt.
Oh, absolutely. And you have to keep this in mind, Lonnie. Ivanka, Trump's daughter, she initially wanted to be, the ambassador to Japan. That's the job she wanted. She's like, I want to live in Tokyo and have this great shishi life. But you'll notice after those meetings with Mr. Abe, that that idea went out the window. Yeah. And now she's got another job that's far, far away from Tokyo. Right. Okay, so even though, Trump hasn't said the word and Abe never said they didn't talk about it, at least in the press, the Fukushima topic, I'm sure, was discussed during that time period, and I'm sure, it had an impact at least on some of his team members. Now, like you said, Trump being pro-nuclear, pro-money, pro-uranium and everything, to the guys with money, uranium is just another widget. They don't care what it is. They don't care what it does. If it makes them money, great. If it doesn't make them money, sell it. Now, here's the thing. Back in the late 2000s, 2008, 2007, but this is back in the nuclear renaissance days, right? Spot uranium prices were $60 per share, right? Now they're like $20 per share, right? And, the guys, the Wall Street guys are like, oh, well, uranium prices are coming back and blah, blah, blah. Dude, let me tell you something. Uranium prices are never going to be at $60 again, all right? And if you're investing in uranium at this point, I'm like, what are you, crazy? You never heard of cryptocurrency? You could make tons more money on any other commodity but uranium, all right? So, this whole, pure pro-uranium, look. Man, the only side of uranium that you should be taking money-wise is the long side of the waste management angle because that's going to cost billions of years and last for thousands of years. So, you want a nice, long investment, there you go, okay? Because that ain't going nowhere until some genius kid figures out some way to neutralize the effects of radiation. We have to deal with the waste situation forever and ever and ever. So, we need to really just focus on what's important here. And the importance is that the nuclear issue is something that we've dealing with for the last 70 years. We'll be dealing with for the next 70,000 years. Okay. So we need to end this stupidity that's going on now. Go to a renewable future. I mean, Lonnie, you see it all the time. You must drive around and see how many new solar panels go up, right? Yeah. Happens all the time here in Phoenix. I go out literally every day. There's new solar panels going up. Why? Because it's so cheap to do it now. That $10,000 investment that you made in 1979 to put solar panels on your house was a big deal back then, right? $10,000 now is nothing in comparison for equity in your home, right? Plus, I sure like that electric bill that's only cost me $40 every month now since I put those solar panels on.
Even here in the Northwest, where they say we don't have a lot of sun, a friend of mine put some solar panels on his house, and every month now, they've been on for just about 2 years, his electricity bill, even in the winter, is about maybe $30. Mm-hmm. And he sells electricity. They give him a check at the end of the year for the money he sells to the grid.
As it should be.
That's
Absolutely.
one house. Imagine if every owner in this city had one on their house. We could be completely off of the whole grid the way they have it planned out.
Exactly. And that's the direction we're heading in right now, Lonnie, because we're moving to smaller electrical grids where it's more compartmentalized like this. It makes a lot more sense. You know, the old model where you have the one plant and it provides X number of megawatts to, X number of households, that model is going away. Okay. The model where you have self-sustainability within your home, that is starting to rise up. And that is a momentum shift. Okay. We're seeing growth, double-digit growth in that area year to year now. And it's making a huge difference. Even China, which, this is the last bastion of the nuclear hope. Even they are moving towards renewables, more wind, more solar. Why? Because it's cheaper. It's cheaper than nuclear. It costs billions of dollars to build a nuclear plant. It costs billions of dollars to run it, and then costs billions of dollars to shut it down later. When you need a solar fix, what do you need? You call Zeke down at the shack and say, "Hey, Zeke, one of our solar panels fell off. Can you come replace it?" Okay, sure.
Yeah, but Dave, I think that's their plus is that it costs billions. Like the few people engaged in this, they're making the billions. So they have a vested interest and they're paving the way. They're buying political. They're either buying it or coercing people. This is the thing. They really don't care who they murder if they don't care about the lives of children.
Oh, absolutely.
If they can actually force scientists to go up to Hanford and tell these women who are giving birth to microencephaly babies that the nuclear contamination from Hanford has nothing to do with these diseases. I mean, these are doctors coming out from the World Health Organization within 4 months of 32 children being born with microencephaly the year before last. Right. Within 4 months, the scientists came out and said, oh, no, there's no correlation whatsoever. We don't see that at all because they skew they don't actually look at the real data. They make up the data as they go along to fit into their box. I mean, this is the recipe for disaster. This is really what this is our greatest challenge is because so many people look at us. We're not the scientists. We're not the experts.
Right.
And, they say, well, if it was that dangerous, the government wouldn't tell us that it was safe. Why would they, why would they lie to us?
Why? Because it's simple. Do, re, mi. Right. It's always been about the money. Right. And see, that's the other, you touched on a really good point there, Lonnie. The billions of dollars that the few in the nuclear power industry that have made, that's the reason why there hasn't been any kind of growth or development in that sector. All this, whiz-bang talk about small modular reactors and thorium salt and all these, fusion things that they've been talking about for the past 20 years. Where are they?
Right.
Where's the production? Where's the development on this? Nowhere is it happening. You know why? Because there's not enough money in it. When you're used to making billions of dollars, and these new projects will only give you a few $100 million, believe me, they don't have any.
Well, on top of that, people are pushing back. Also, people are going, no, we're not going to do that anymore. It's completely unnecessary. Although I do have to say that the HR 3053, Donna Gilmore is going to be on tomorrow talking about that. The Nuclear Waste Policy Amendment Act of 2017 seems to be sailing through Congress and picking up Congress people. So I think the Fuku fighters need to step up their game and start calling our Congress people and telling them, get your name off of that bill and try to block it because we've got to stop it. They're literally going to sell the nuclear waste to private industry. Ugh. Now, they have amended it in committee. They say that they have amended it so that the air rights and the water rights have been restored to the federal government. Isn't that nice of them?
Oh, wow. Yeah, great.
But they're still going to stop. They're not going to be doing environmental impact reports. They're not going to be doing safety reports. There's going to be no government oversight on nuclear waste. Literally, we're going to be handing it over completely to the polluters and saying, good luck for that. On top of, while we still have the Price-Anderson Act, which will limit their liability and really makes them completely unaccountable. There's no way anybody could ever go to jail for intentionally, say, dumping a bunch of nuclear waste in the middle of Detroit or in the middle of, some city, some little suburban city that they want to get rid of the population. And be like, oops, sorry about that.
Yeah. No, you're right. And I hope that these people who are, who lack conscience while they're doing this, I hope when they get cancer later in life, or their grandkids get cancer, more importantly, that they look back and they see that, karma's a bitch. This is what you brought on yourself. And like you said, they don't care. As long as they're making the money now, they don't care. But that's been my argument the whole time, Lonnie, and I think that's where I've actually gotten a lot of traction with Operation Save the Earth. Is I've been directly talking to people on the Wall Street level and saying, look, uranium is just a loser. This whole nuclear thing is just stupid. Why are you investing in that when you could be investing in all these other things that are going to make you a lot of money, right? And it's like investing in 8-track players. Now, hey. 8-tracks, they're going to make a comeback. No, they're not. What are you talking about? We got MP3 players now, homie. Get out of here. All right.
Yeah, that's kind of what they want to do, is drag us back. In fact, I think they think that's part of the Make America Great Again, is let's go back to paying 8-tracks,
Yeah, 8-tracks. Let's have that. Let's bring coal burning plants back. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And that's the thing, Lonnie. I think the Fuku fighters need to understand this. We got the momentum. We're the ones who have been writing the narrative on Fukushima for the past 5 years, not them. Because even with all of their unlimited resources and everything, what's the trend? The trend is away from nuclear. It's not towards it, right? And once Trump is gone and, other administrations come in, guess what? The trend that we started is going to continue. So, if y'all want to,
and we're even actually putting pressure on the so-called climate changers like Bill McKibben, who basically says, and what's his name, Hansen, they all say, nuclear isn't that bad. Coal is worse than nuclear. Don't worry about the nuclear. Let's get off coal and then nuclear second. That's kind of their attitude. Yeah, they don't see Fukushima as a major threat. You argue with them that, 6 years, 7 years of nonstop pollution into the ocean of mega amounts. Mm-hmm. What is it, Dave? 100,000 gallons of nuclear waste gets poured into the Pacific Ocean every single day. Every day.
Yep. Yeah.
I mean, multiply that times 7 years and tell me that cannot, it has to have some kind of catastrophic amount. There's something going on in the ocean. We see it with the animal deaths.
Absolutely. I always say that Fukushima is the telephone pole that broke the camel's back in the Pacific Ocean, because as bad as overfishing and as bad as mercury poisoning, as bad as all the other things that we've dumped into the ocean, there's a huge, garbage patch out there. As bad as it is in Pacific Ocean, it was, you could still go fishing and see fish. Nowadays, no, not really, because all the fish are gone. And when you have reports of orcas eating great white sharks because that's all that's left, hey man, that's alpha eating alpha. All right,
I mean, just go to the animal, just type in mass animal deaths, and there's a lady that stocks up all these things. Just October 20th, 125,000 salmon dead from disease in salmon farms.
Oh yeah.
I mean, what was it in the Antarctic? I think only 2 chicks survived out of the thousands of chicks that died of starvation.
Yeah.
I mean, it is going on, and we're the top of the food chain, so we don't quite see it yet, but it is coming.
Yeah, we'll start to really see it when there's no more animals around. It's like, hey, remember when there was giraffes
Yeah.
there aren't any anymore. And that's what we've seen: mass deaths due to just pollution.
Yeah.
And the effects of overpopulation by our species over the past 30 years that has just been unbelievable.
Yeah.
And now with Fukushima on top of that, ugh.
Yeah, I say we're in a barrel. We went over Niagara in a barrel and we haven't hit the bottom yet. I mean, we still have not hit the bottom. We're still on the thrill of the ride.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Hoping that we can survive. And I think the reason that I do this, Dave, is because I do believe that there is a chance that some of us might survive. Like, this is a catastrophic event, and it is going to, I mean, Guy McPherson, I don't know if you know who he is, but I listen to Guy McPherson. He basically has said that the world, really, we're too far beyond to save the planet. The mass extinction is happening. Humans are on their way out no matter what. So we don't have 50 years. He doesn't think we have 100. He doesn't think we have 50 years. And when I first heard of him, I was really angry at that message because his message is really sweet. It's like, get your life in order, live the life you want to have. Don't stress over it. Speak about what's going on, protect yourself, but just get a grip that really this is where we're at. And I was super angry when I first heard that because being the eternal optimist, I believe that all things work out and that this is intentional, like in the universal thing of the world, like this is our progress as humans. This is a challenge that we have to face to overcome it. I believe it's to stop war. Because love is greater than fear, and we've been living in fear for the last 10, 12,000 years. It's time for us to live on the planet in love with the planet and in harmony.
Yeah, I totally agree.
And so, but in a way, what he's attempting to do is get people to consciously accept the fact that we have seriously polluted the planet, and we really must, every one of us, have a responsibility to face that fact.
Yes. Yeah, I totally agree with that. I've been saying for quite some time now, Lonnie, it's like on March 11th, 2011, you died. We all died. Now that you're dead, what are you going to do with your life? That's the question. Because, Fukushima has affected you whether you want to believe it or not. The the World Health Organization says that you got one chest X-ray worth of radiation from as if, right? If it's just one chest X-ray, then how come, people are getting cancer like it's the flu? Okay, one chest X-ray don't give you that cancer, all right?
And diabetes is off the charts, and schizophrenia. I mean, and this is the thing. It's not just one chest. It might be one chest X-ray every day. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, maybe it is one chest X-ray, but it's a cumulative effect because it has not stopped. It's not like these other nuclear power plants that have broken down where they've been able to cap it. Like even Chernobyl doesn't spew out nonstop radiation.
Right.
Fukushima is spewing out nonstop radiation, period.
Yeah, exactly. So, and here's the thing, Lonnie, I'm a glass half full guy myself also. So the way I look at it is like we are still up and walking around above ground right now. We're not dead yet. Mr. McPherson says we have 100 years. That's great. I have right now. I have today.
Exactly.
Right.
That's what I decided too, Dave.
And that's the thing, and I know, and getting back to what we were talking about at the beginning of the show, Fuku fighters, hey guys, I know it's hard. I know that this is the most thankless job. You're not going to make a lot of money. If you're going to make any money at all. There's a lot of people who stand against you. There's a lot of people who don't understand what you're talking about. And it takes a long time to get a handle on the information, the data, the research, and everything that's out there so that you can actually know what you're talking about. I mean, when I first started, I didn't know nothing about nuclear energy at all. And now I know way more about it than I ever planned on knowing in my entire life.
Me too,
I think,
Dave.
And that's the thing, can we get the kids to have at least a base understanding of what nuclear radiation does to the body, both on an internal and external level? Yes, we can. All this is a simple education matter, right? And it's our job to get the next generation ready to do the heavy lifting on whatever comes next. Whether it's feast or famine, that's up to them to decide. That's out of my hands. 40 years from now, I won't be here, right? So it's going to be up to them. So what we have to do is keep on keeping on, stay strong for ourselves and each other, and help that next generation, because they're the ones that really need it. They're the ones who are really going to have to grapple with this and figure out a way around it. Because if they don't, oh well. And that's the thing. When I came to the decision myself to take on this challenge, I was like, wow, is this something I really want to do? It's a big responsibility. But then, I realized I couldn't look myself in the mirror in the morning, knowing that I could have done something and then didn't.
Me too.
Especially, with my ties to Japan and everything, but even that aside, I looked at, all of the nieces and nephews, like I said, and all of my friends who have kids that I've watched grow up, and so many of these great, incredible, talented kids that are coming up. I was like, no, I got to do this for them. I have got to do this for them, because they're the ones that need it. They're the ones that need it. And it's simple. It's a simple matter of using the tools that we have, like the internet, like our smartphones, and giving this information to each other freely and immediately, globally, because we can. We have more power now, individually, with this technology than we ever have as individuals in the history of mankind. So I've just been telling everybody, use that power. Get up. Find that motivation. It doesn't have to be about Fukushima. It doesn't even have to be about the nuclear issue. Find what it is that is important to you. It is important to your loved ones and their safety, and then go for it, because you can. And here's the thing. It doesn't take all day. You think I'm on this every single moment of every single day? No, I would lose my mind. And none of the Fuku fighters do either. You have a life. Kevin has a life. Dana has a life. We all have lives, right? But when it comes time to getting down and doing the get down, oh, we can. And we will. And we will continue to do so until this thing is dead and buried. Hey, guess what, nuclear bad guys? You keep coming with your propaganda. You keep coming with your stupid mess. And we're going to keep beating you down every day, because that's what we do. We show up every day and we do the work. Y'all want to play golf? Guess what? While you're doing that, we're going to be whooping your butts behind your back. So go ahead. No, just go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, that's essentially what our attitude has to be, because that's our only, and I really do believe that our thoughts are things. Like, if we believe it's all pointless, I think that the solutions are found in our aspirations. Mm-hmm. We can't just give up. We have to really believe that there is going to be an answer. Dave, we have less than a minute left. I hope that you will come back and join us again in the next month or so, because I love having you on. I think it encourages people, and I'm very, very grateful personally for your weekly podcasts. I listen to them, and they keep me going, and you give me bits, and they're short. That's the cool thing is they're not like an hour-long podcast. Right. They're a quick 10, 15-minute podcast. Mm-hmm. Boom, you get straight to the point. You're like the weekly cheerleader to keep us going on humanity's side. So I thank you for that.
Thank you, and I want to thank my dad in particular for showing me that shorter can be better. He told me early on when I first started this process, because I had like really, really long videos.
About 5 seconds.
Yeah, he said less is more, and he's been right.
Put your courage feet on, you guys. We'll talk to you soon.